So this is another in our series of tips for full-time RVing. So today we're going to be talking about planning your RV adventure, where you want to go, when you want to go, what you want to do. So this is one of a series of 5 videos that we're making after our first 8 months of RV traveling around the country, because we've learned some things and we thought we could share them with some people who maybe want to do this too. If you would want to travel around the country, hopefully these tips will help you out. Today you'll find us in attire that we don't generally like to wear. Part of why we started our full-time RV adventure is we wanted to just be in warmer weather all the time. So knit hats, jackets, and all bundled up is not our favorite way to be, but we're headed north for the holidays, and therefore these things are necessary. This first tip may seem a little bit obvious, but it's where do you want to go? So you may want to travel around to see landmarks. You want to go see the Grand Canyon, Hoover Dam. You may want to do some traveling to see old high school or college friends or people you grew up with. There may be family cross country that you never get to visit with.
Or you may want to go to different events. Like every May we go to the Indy 500, so we plan around that. And there's like the Balloon Festival in New Mexico. So anything like that you want to get to and you have to walk into your plans.
It is probably a combination of all those things. We did some events like the Indy 500. We visited quite a lot of friends. And there were a few landmarks that we saw along the way in our first 9 months. So you want to jot those things down. Then you want to go online if it's an event or something and find out the specific dates. So we know Memorial Day weekend every year we're in Indianapolis. That's just our thing. So we kind of have to plan our journey around that because we never want to miss it.
And you also have to kind of plan around the weather. So that's another thing you can look up if you kind of what area you want to be in. Check the weather. Like when we were in Southern California in June and July, it was in the 100s.
Yeah, not the best plan. Okay, so for all those people who say it's a dry heat and it's not bad, it's like a suffocating heat. You can go online, look up average temperatures in an area. You can find out average temperatures, average rainfall. You know, you may go to a place that it's rainy season and you're not going to get to go do the hiking or biking or hang out on the beach or whatever it was that you wanted to do. So it's always good to go online and check those. So first thing would be events, because those are specific dates. Second thing would be check the weather in the different areas. If you don't mind it being in the 40s, then have at it. Go there when it's in the 40s or 50s. We prefer warmer weather, so you will not find us around the Great Lakes or up in Maine in, say, January. Another tip when you're sitting down kind of doing that master plan of where you want to go, you're kind of figuring out when you want to go online and look for tips for the area. We found a lot of good tips. They may tell you when a place is most crowded. The website may say a certain thing is under renovation, so it may be closed, you know, June and July. So it's always good to go online, do your research, check those things out, and get a rough plan of where you want to be, when you want to be there, and then start from there onto tip number 2.
Now, an important part of the planning process is knowing where you want to stay. Once you've decided what places you want to go, you have to figure out where exactly you want to stay. What campgrounds, what state parks, that type of thing. So the first thing, you know, we always do and what you should do is figure out what type of camping you want to do. Do you want full hookup, resort, private park kind of camping? Or are you more into, you know, the state
rustic,
parks?
Outdoors?
Yeah, you know, like state parks
What do you
or
think
national
of when
parks?
you hear camping?
Well, yeah.
And for us, that was outdoor stuff.
Yeah.
So we choose state parks. Sometimes private campgrounds are better if we need Wi-Fi or...
Yeah, it's all about what amenities you want. If you want the full hookups, if you want sewer hookup, electric water, and you want to be close to a pool or something like that, you know, a place that has a snack bar, that type of thing, you're going to look for more of the RV resort types, KOAs, you know, private campgrounds that have all those amenities. Or, you know, like Jared was saying, if you like us and you're just looking for biking, hiking, kayaking, you'd probably be better off finding a state park or a national park and you know, getting reservations there. Now, this is an important part Reservations are going to vary depending on what types of places you're going. Lots of state parks use Reserve America, and we really like Reserve America because it makes the process so easy.
It all goes through one place.
Yeah, it's like a central place. You know, if you have like 6 different reservations in 6 different states, they're all through Reserve America, they'll all show up on your dashboard. Other places that don't use Reserve America, then like the national parks has their own reservation system online. It's not quite as good as the Reserve America site, but it gets the job done. And then private campgrounds, KOAs, all have, they have a nice central reservation system, the bigger chains. So another aspect to consider is not just state park or private park. If you want to be close to a certain attraction or like close to a certain city, if you like, if you're going to be going into the city every day or every other day, you don't want to have to drive 45 minutes to get there. So just try to find. And there's even county parks that are usually a little bit closer to the cities.
And what, state parks are usually cheaper, right?
Yeah, state parks are going to run, average $20 to $30 a night. Some of them, even cheaper than that, like 15 to 18. And then, the ones that are in the more touristy areas and the more desirable ones, higher demand, it can get up to like $35.
Tip number 3 is kind of interconnected with tip number 2, and that is deciding how far you want to travel each day. If you know that you don't like to drive more than 5 or 6 hours a day, then you can figure, all right, it's only about 300 miles a day. And that's going to figure into your planning of where you want to stay. So if you know, like we do, we might travel 10 to 12 hours a day sometimes. We don't mind. We prefer 6 to 8. We'll do 10 to 12 sometimes. So know what your tolerance is for sitting in the car and, driving for a long day. So if you find out and say, you know what, we really don't want to go more than about 300 miles a day, then you start plotting your trip out that way. So for instance, we wanted to get from Indianapolis at the end of May to Southern California by the middle of June. I think it was like June 15th or something. So that tells you have 2 weeks. We knew we wanted to do that. The problem was we knew it was far, but until about
we didn't know quite how far.
Yeah, until about like May 26th, we didn't bother really to check the full mileage on that. So when we sat down and we did Google Maps, we're like, oh wow, that's 2,000 miles. So we had 2 weeks to do that. In order to make the time schedule we wanted to do, we drove 500 miles one day, did a 1 overnight stay, 500 miles, and got to Colorado. Stayed there for a week, and then did 500 miles, overnighted at a Walmart, and another 500 miles, and ended up in Southern California one day before we needed to get there. So that's where planning comes in handy. We would have probably preferred to have a little bit more relaxed journey, but we just didn't bother to check that it was 2,000 miles. Once you have your destinations figured out, you have your mileage looked up on your Google Maps, you know you want to only go about 300 miles a day. So now you look at that route that you have and say, okay, here's a town about 300 miles from where I've started. I'll look around that area, go online, check for RV parks, state parks, whatever it is you want to stay at, and find one that's available. If it's just an overnight stay, you might want to just stay in a Cabela's parking lot, or if you're part of Harvest Host, you could get an overnight stay there. There's a bunch of different options for that, but keep in mind, as you get out west in the United States and maybe less developed areas, your 300 miles may have to fluctuate. There might not be anything in that zone. You may have to either go 250 miles or 380 on that day to get to the type of overnight accommodations that you want.
Yeah, and one thing to keep in mind for mostly the state parks and national parks, they do have limits on how long you can stay.
So if you're trying to stay for the whole winter, you're going to have to skip around a bit. With private campgrounds, you can stay in one place. State and national parks, it varies. In Florida, you can stay 2 weeks at a time, and up to 56 days in a 6-month period, so you gotta watch that.
And then other state, well, the national parks are most of, in general, it's 14 days maximum in one park, and then something like 30 days in the whole season, in the peak season in that park. So you might just have to jump around parks, go to a private one for a week, come back to the national one, but you can't go over that 28 or 30 days or whatever the peak season limit is for that specific park. And you can go on to the National Park Service website or the state parks that you're considering and check out what their policies are. The rates are going to vary from state parks to national parks to private resorts and campgrounds. National parks probably, it might be a tie, but a lot of national parks are very inexpensive.
And they have a 28-day max because they're so popular.
Yeah, you have to just watch your maximums. At private campgrounds, one strategy to kind of save money, if you're going to be staying more than 2 weeks anyway, ask if they have a discount for weekly rates, or if they have a monthly rate. You can save a lot of money that way. We did a couple of times, and it saves you a ton, because they want to fill spots, and if you can guarantee you're going to stay there for 3 or 4 weeks, they'll give you a break. In state parks and national parks, there are some programs available. There's an annual pass for the national park system. You could get that. I think that's $80.
And then each state, like we got a Colorado pass.
Yep, you can get an annual pass at the state park. And since we have Florida residency, we get, and I'm disabled, I get a Florida resident disabled discount of 50%, which is really nice, off of the base camping rate. So you just look into what programs and discounts are available for each state. You might be able to get something.
Tip number 5 is it's okay to not have a plan.
More often than not, we have not had a plan, and it's amazing. Things always work out. We have experienced some great places that we've stayed that we didn't expect to because we didn't have a plan. Now, you should keep in mind that sometimes not having a plan will cost you a little more. I know that we had a change of plans. We originally planned to stay in a California state park, and we got there, and it was beautiful, but it was this windy road, narrow road.
11 and 13% grade.
Yeah, like 13% grades, no guide rail, one lane. It was just a very scary drive with the RV, and we had absolutely no Wi-Fi, no phone coverage. So we had to find an alternative plan for those 2 weeks. So we went out of the park, called around to some local RV parks, and did find a private one. Now, it cost us more than the state park would have cost, but it worked out really well. It was a good location. We really enjoyed being there. We actually ended up getting a monthly rate, so it wasn't that much more expensive. And we stayed there a whole month, which we were really glad we did, because we only planned to stay there for 2 weeks originally in that area. So things will always work out, whether you purposely not had a plan and we're just like, nope, we're winging it, we're just gonna, go where we feel like going, or your plan A doesn't work out. If the hurricane comes through or something, or a wildfire and you can't get to an area, you're gonna have to, just kind of wing it and come up with a plan B. So it's okay not to have a plan. Yes, I will admit, it is still a little more stressful if you're like, okay, where are we going tomorrow? Need to find a place to stay tomorrow. But the more you travel, look online for tips and suggestions. You'll find all sorts of places. It's amazing what's out there and the different opportunities to stay places that you can find. So don't ever be too concerned about it. It's okay not to have a plan. These are some of the things that we've learned for planning your RV trip in our 9 months of travel. It, of course, is not inclusive, and we are still really much in the learning process and figuring out what works best. So if you have tips for planning your RV travels, let us know down in the comments below. I'm sure it would help us out, and it would help someone else out who's looking at doing this. And also to follow along on our journey as we travel across the country. We put up new videos every Sunday night at 8:30 Eastern Standard Time. So hit the bell to get notification. Hit that subscribe button, like, share us with your friends if they like to travel, and we will see you next time.